Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm your host, Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How are we doing, Roland?
I'm great. Excited. This is a good week for me. The Astros just won their division series. They're back in the championship series. I'm a big, huge baseball fan for anybody that doesn't know. Things are looking up. We got a great episode of Rebels to recap as well. This one I'm particularly excited for. I'm sure you knew that instantly when you saw it.
I did, and I knew the exact moment where your little nerd senses went off, but we'll get to that. So before we get to anything else, let's clear up some business here, and I'd like to remind everyone at the top of the show to please like, share, subscribe, and rate. It's very helpful, and we really appreciate it. If you haven't already done it, please consider doing so. Before we get to today's episode, as usual, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
Okay, so not too much big news around the galaxy this week. A lot of birthdays, which we'll get to in a bit. I just want to shout out some reminders for starters. Just want to remind everybody, as of today, we're recording on a Monday, October 17th. We are 9 days out from Tales of the Jedi. So just want to give a little countdown on that because it is going to be one of those shows that's going to be very near and dear to us. Anything animated in the Star Wars universe, they kind of interconnect with all the other animated shows more so than they do into live action and the movies. They don't get me wrong, they do connect, but they're just a little bit more special. And I know all the listeners and viewers out there that watch animation, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. So once you're part of the Star Wars animated universe, these shows, anything they announce that's brand new, it just I'm assuming I'm not the only one that gets incredibly hyped to see them.
No, you're not. You're definitely not the only one.
Yeah, it's just like next level Star Wars, for as crazy as that might sound to talk about animated, but we talk about it all the time on here, how great the animated universe is for Star Wars. So I mean, you're not hearing anything new from us. And then I just also wanted to remind everybody that Andor is indeed 12 episodes. So as of this past episode, we just got episode 6. So we have 6 episodes left in that series. And in case you guys missed it or you haven't picked up on it yet, Andor is broken into 3 episode arcs. So that means there's 2 full arcs left that we're going to experience in season 1.
And just a little note, I was going to say it when we got to Andor later, but our production schedule, basically, if you're listening to this, let's just say the day that this drops, episode 7 would have already aired a couple days prior. So we're always going to be 1 week behind, just kind of like the way we were with Obi-Wan Kenobi because of our production schedule. So the episode we're going to discuss today is basically last week's episode if you're watching this now. Sorry, not to get too crazy, but hey, if you're a Star Wars fan, you already are used to like jumbled up timelines and shit, so it's okay.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's talk about all the birthdays we had this week because we have indeed a lot of them.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, for starters, we have Michael Giacchino. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. His birthday was October 10th. He is the composer for Rogue One. So I like when I see these new composers. Music is such a big part of my life, particularly when it comes to movies and such. So when I see anybody not named John Williams and it's something that really like hits, I kind of like to dig more into what they do. So you'd be surprised, like some of these names, like you think you never heard of them, and then you go and listen to their work, and they've been around for such a long time. I have not had the pleasure of listening to Michael Giacchino's like discography, so to say. So I can't tell you what else he's done, but that's something I'm definitely going to be looking into.
No, and it's always cool. Like basically, he was breaking new ground as far as using an outside, like you said, person not named John Williams in a Star Wars movie. So that was kind of like a first, also. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. That would indeed be the first, I suppose, after Kevin Kiner, who was the composer for the animated stuff. Right. But on that note, like what you're saying, how they break away, I do love how they still so fluidly incorporate John Williams' like original trilogy themes and such in their own, perspective method of however they're going to incorporate it into whatever film or animated feature they're doing that's brand new. So I do always enjoy that nonetheless. So next on the list, we have a newcomer to the Star Wars universe, Grant Feely, October 14th. He played young Luke Skywalker in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I remember Pete mentioning that he was definitely one of those iPad kids.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because that's got to be like the most like innocent, like looking kid I've ever seen in Star Wars, as opposed to Leia on the other hand, who was just like such a hard ass, and like way mature above her for age.
Little Spitfire.
Yeah. Here's one I'm sure you're gonna like, Pete. Flea.
Yes.
October 16th. He plays Vec Nokru in Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I'm sure all the listeners and viewers out there are gonna know him more so as the bassist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Absolutely. It was a very, very welcome surprise to see him in that series. I was not expecting him at all. That was a complete and total out of left field spoiler, or not spoiler, but shocker, I guess. I was like, I remember watching, I'm like, holy shit, is that Flea? Like, no way. I definitely had a no way moment.
Does he have like a lot of other filmography that he does? Because when I was looking up his name, I saw that he has appearances like in all these movies and TV shows.
He has like the two big ones that I can think of off the top of my head is he was in Back to the Future 2, which you mentioned last week. He was the boss, not the boss, the co-worker of Marty McFly in the future that gets him fired.
Oh, okay. Yes,
he comes out on the screen and kind of like, you know, you remember that part?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay, and more closer to my heart, he is also one of the nihilists from The Big Lebowski. One of the three people that are chasing him, and he's one of the German guys. Basically, he plays a German. So that's the two I can think of right now. And then of course Star Wars. So Flea's a all around badass in my book.
Yeah, it appears so. He's all over the place. That's awesome. All right, so next on our list, we have Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, born October 16th. We have not mentioned her in Rebels, but she plays Governor Price in Star Wars Rebels. We will be seeing more of her come season 3, so pretty awesome character, particularly if you've read the Thrawn trilogy books. We do get a bit more of her history in the very first Thrawn novel. The name is eluding me at the moment, but this will actually be the canon novelization for Thrawn, and you really get a pretty awesome background of Governor Price before she goes into that position that we see her in Rebels. So if you guys have not read or listened to the Thrawn trilogy, I highly recommend it.
Well, little side note, Rolly, I have books 2 and 3 in paperback that I was gifted. I do not have the first one, so that is the only thing that's kept me from reading it. So if anybody out there has a link to like a bargain book link where I can get it, or just wants to send it directly to me, hit me in the DMs, because I would like to start that. I just haven't, because I'm a purist as far as storyline goes. I cannot read book 2 and 3 before I read book 1. Just
you have, I remember you sent a picture of those novels. I think you have the non-canon, the Legends Thrawn trilogy, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, there's 2 different trilogies?
Yeah, so
what
so
the
cool
hell?
Thing about so Thrawn was actually invented by Timothy Zahn years before he came out in Rebels. I believe this trilogy came out before the prequel trilogy came out. That's how old this character is. I think that's the one you have, the Heir to the Empire.
Yes, I'm looking it up right now. So I have Dark Force Rising and The Last Command, but I don't have the first book, Heir to the Empire. But all that's pointless now, because Rolly just said that my trilogy is bullshit.
Not at all. No, guys, do not, don't take what Pete just said verbatim. I just had this discussion with a colleague maybe about a little over a month ago, and we talked about how everything in the Legends, which is considered the expanded universe that's non-canon, it's so relevant still, because a lot of stuff is being pulled into canon. The stories are great. I've talked to length of the Darth Bane trilogy, which is not canon. There's just so many great stories. So guys, if you're looking to get into Star Wars books, if it's not canon, read it. Trust me, it's worth the read. There's a reason that these books have such a huge following. It's not going to affect your viewing of what is canon as far as live action and animated series. Trust me, you're going to be better off for just reading it nonetheless.
Okay, so basically, I just looked it up. Those 3 are non-canon. The other ones are just called Star Wars Thrawn, and then it's called Thrawn Alliances, and then Thrawn.
That's the second one.
Thrawn Treason. That's the official canon trilogy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the second and third book. For whatever reason, I can't remember the name of the first book, unless it's just Star Wars Thrawn.
It's just Thrawn. Yeah, that's just what it's
okay. Yeah, the first one particularly is pretty awesome. Highly recommend. And that's the actual novel where we get the very good background of Governor Price, just to get back on track here.
Okay. Sorry, I took us through a trip through the woods. Sorry, guys.
All good. Next on our list, we have Erin Kellyman, October 17th. You guys might remember her as Enfys Nest in Solo, a Star Wars story. Me and Pete were just talking about her before we started recording here. You guys also might remember her. I don't remember the name of her character in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but she did come out in that show as well. And she's actually coming out in the new Willow movie that's coming out here.
Yes, I did see her in that. She's hard to miss. She's got that really bright, like fire orange curly hair, which is, really unique, especially in the landscape of the current, actresses out there. She definitely stands out.
Yeah, for sure. And then next on our list, this one's very near and dear to me. I love this character so much. Michelle Ang, October 17th. She voices none other than Omega, or as we know her, Omega in the Bad Batch.
Omega.
And last but certainly not least, one of our all-star rebels in the Star Wars universe, Felicity Jones, born October 17th. She plays Jyn Erso in Rogue One.
Love her.
Yeah, and I know we're going to segue right into Andor after just mentioning Jyn Erso, but I love how Rogue One is like Jyn Erso's story, and we get Cassian Andor, and now we're kind of seeing a whole different rebel perspective from Cassian in the Andor series. So nice little segue there.
Yep. So happy birthday once again to all of our Star Wars family. We are now going to segue into the segment where Rolly and I discuss not the last episode of Andor, but the last week's episode of Andor. And that would be episode 6. And it was called The Eye. And my God, was that a hell of an episode. Rolly, let's do this.
Yeah. I'm at a loss for words for this episode, honestly. I knew it was going to be great because, like I mentioned to you guys, it was the third episode in the second arc. We knew it was going to be the heist that they've been planning for. Right. But beyond that, like, they just kept hyping up this idea of the Eye of Aldhani, and it was supposed to be this massive celebration. Like, even the Imperials wanted to see it, right? We have kind of like some of those officers asking for the time off so that the troopers can see it. And that had to have been one of the coolest visualizations of
it was absolutely stunning.
I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah, you guys just need to go. Pete, I'm sure Pete can throw up an image for you guys.
I will.
Yeah, you guys really have to kind of see it visually in the show. It was so cool. I can see why everybody hyped it up in the show, but it was awesome. It was just such a visual experience to see on screen, and it's when you see it, it's kind of very much understood why I forget what they call the locals on Aldhani, the Donnies, or I think
something
that's
like
what they call them, like that.
FYI, for a hot minute, I really thought that the lead guy was Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad. I really thought that. I was like, oh my God, they got everybody in this, and no, it was not him. It just looks a lot like him.
Yeah, that's true. He does. But yeah, I loved that whole idea of what they did with it, and also the heist portion of it where they're actually having that TIE fighter chase basically right into the Eye as Cassian and the rebels. It's funny they call them rebels, but that's what they are. Cassian and the rebels are, basically taking that vehicle that's loaded with all the cash, all the payroll, and trying to get the heck out of there. And on that note, too, we did get an answer to
I was completely wrong.
Discussion last week.
It literally is like gold bars or gold coins or whatnot. So I don't know where I got the idea that they were just stealing paperwork. I think I mentioned this last week, but I'm almost certain that when Luthen first talks to Cassian, that he specifically says payroll of. Right. And then he mentions like maybe high-ranking officials, but the way he words it makes it sound like it is documentation. Right. And maybe he did it that way purposely, knowing that if money was involved, Cassian might, create an alternative plan to steal it. But nonetheless, it did end up being payroll, and it makes sense too because
Luthen has the conversation with Mon Mothma in the previous episode, how they're running low on funds. So to straight up steal money,
Right.
you know, it makes a lot of sense, more so than the names. And that's what ends up happening. And that whole heist, yeah, it was just crazy. And I knew that there was going to be deaths coming. I couldn't have said who.
Mhm.
Obviously, we knew Cassian was going to survive, but the one person that I was hoping would not die, I guess I should have known.
I did. I never vocalized it, but I knew from the minute we met him. He's the young, kind of like starry-eyed, kind of a hopeful, and I was like, this guy's gonna die. As soon as I saw him, I knew it. I just didn't know it was gonna happen this early. But yeah, we lost. What was his name?
Nemec. And just to remind you guys, Nemec was basically the purest of the purest, like,
yeah,
true rebel on the team. He was all about the cause so much that he wrote a manifesto for the rebellion, and the way that he dies was just so sad, because you knew from the get-go that Cassian was hired to help this team, and they basically only knew so much of what they were doing. And sure enough, they had a plan to load all this payroll into that ship, but they didn't think through all the details, and this poor kid gets crushed by the very like treasure gold that they steal.
Right.
And it was just like the worst like possible scenario.
It was like not quick. He like suffered for a while, so it was almost like a wounded like dog. Like that's how like it hit me, because I knew he was going to die. I had that feeling, but I thought that he was going to get blasted and, you know, die in Cassian's arms or something like that. But no, he got crushed, got pinned between the, you know, and that was a really, really tough scene.
Yeah, and then they even like led you to believe that he might survive, because rather than go to the rendezvous point wherever they're supposed to take this payroll, they Skeen and Vel say, no, we need to get him to a doctor. We know a doctor. So sure enough, they go, and the guy still doesn't make it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you really dragging me through this emotionally, making me think he's gonna survive, and then he doesn't.
So I know that manifesto is gonna play a part coming up soon. I don't know how, but what are your thoughts on how it's going to play?
Yeah, so I'm hoping, who knows what Tony Gilroy has up his sleeve, but I'm hoping that Cassian starts reading that manifesto, and that's ultimately the reason why he he joins the Rebel Alliance. Because even through this episode, he says it at the end, like, give me my cut, I'm out. Like, that's all I signed up for. But I'm thinking that he's going to start reading the manifesto, and that's going to, you know, change his thoughts on the whole idea of the rebellion, and he's going to join. And it would be really, really cool if that manifesto is actually something that is distributed amongst other rebel cells, and that's what ultimately creates the idea of a Rebel Alliance. I think that would be the coolest thing, to have like this kid Nemec, to where his death was not in vain, and he actually plays such a great role in the creation of the overall Rebel Alliance.
Right.
That one's kind of like a stretch, I'm thinking. I know for Cassian, I'm pretty sure, almost certain that's going to happen, but it would be cool if he did have an even larger impact with his manifesto.
Yeah. Or like, what if, I don't know what role Saw Gerrera is going to play in this, but maybe the manifesto gets into his hands, and that helps push him in the direction that he inevitably ends up going, like, you know, to be more of a militant in his rebel beliefs.
Yeah, and I totally forgot that we're still gonna get Saw Gerrera here in this upcoming season. So looking forward to see that, because you guys know he's a radical. So
yes,
yeah, interested to see more of that. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed about the episode was basically the betrayal by Skeen. He was kind of the one who was the person on the team that was questioning Cassian, his background, what's he doing there. And then sure enough, once they complete the heist, they're at the doctor's waiting for Nemec to basically see if he's gonna make it through or not. And Skeen actually makes a side offer to Cassian and tells him, hey, we stole 60 or 80 million, I don't remember exactly, let's split it 50-50 and get out of here.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I'm not expecting that at all.
Yeah, what was even more unexpected for me is he confesses to Cassian that he lied. He told Cassian originally in the previous episode that he was there because of his brother's death, and he confesses to Cassian, I don't have a brother. Like, you and I are the same person. We're just here for the money. So what was really interesting for me was how quickly Cassian yet again pulls the trigger on this guy, and says, no, well, he decides his fate then and there that this guy, he's not here for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I'm just
he truly cannot be trusted. Just based on the fact that his whole persona was based on a lie. And at the moment, like the peak pivotal moment where he could have done the right thing or the wrong thing, he chose the wrong thing and just said, you know what, let's just steal it. Let's just take it all. That just proves that he's more pirate than rebel, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, I know Cassian is not one to hesitate on pulling the trigger. I'm just kind of like, what could Cassian have done differently? Because even after he kills him, he goes and confesses to Vel, like, I had to kill Skeen because he wanted to steal basically all the loot. And Vel didn't believe him. And Cassian was like, well, basically, I did it. But what's interesting at that point is Cassian is already like being true to who he is, in the sense that he tells her, rather than just taking his cut and leaving,
right,
he tells her, I'm taking my 30K that I was promised, the rest is yours. So Cassian is very much like an honest person, a very brutally honest person, but he doesn't F around when it comes to entanglements. He's quick to pull the trigger. This is the third time between Rogue One and this show where this guy instantly pulls the trigger, and he doesn't hesitate. So that's kind of crazy.
Yep.
And then the last thing I wanted to discuss that I thought was really cool was the news breaking out of what happens to the Empire at Aldhani, specifically in Luthen's
menagerie.
Luthen's collectible antique shop.
Right.
Yeah, one of the customers there, he's like, do you have anything from Aldhani? And Luthen's like, what do you mean? And he's like, you didn't hear what happened? And sure enough, he goes to the back and he starts celebrating, like almost like a happy ending to such a tragic episode. Like Luthen knows, in my opinion at this point, that they've now caused a major dent in the Empire's operations. They're known, so now bigger things are going to start happening for the rebellion. I think this is one of the small sparks that leads to all-out rebellion.
No, that was a great final scene. I love that he had to basically go celebrate in silence and in hiding because he didn't know who was watching, and he couldn't give away his hand that was happy about this news when you're supposed to be upset that someone is trying to take or hurt the Empire, because we're all under the Imperial rule now. So yeah, I thought it was a great ending to this episode, and I look forward to the next one. But I guess I look forward to the next one because it's the next arc starting in the story. So it's going to be one of those that, like, it's a lot of information, and then probably the way it's been going, the trend is the first episode of the arc is a lot of information. The second episode is all the putting it all in place, and the third one, all the hell's going to break loose. So that's pretty cool. I'm very much excited
for these last two arcs. Yeah, seriously, this show is insanely awesome. It's definitely one of the best Star Wars watches I've ever seen.
All right, well, then we're going to put a button on Andor for now, and we are going to go into what we're all here for, which is Star Wars Rebels. So, Rolly, why don't you hit me with a synopsis of this week's episode?
So after the Empire's Inquisitors begin targeting select babies for abduction, Ahsoka Tano and the Ghost crew investigate. What they find is unsettling, and it all leads to a deadly confrontation with the children's fates hanging in the balance.
Sweet. So this is season 2, episode 10. It's called The Future of the Force, and I very much enjoyed this episode. It was a great follow-up to the last one, the stealth strike. The show opens aboard a civilian transport where a mother is trying to calm her baby and telling her that they're away from the trouble now and not to worry, and that a new life awaits them both. Shortly after, however, the transport is seized by an Imperial Star Destroyer, and the 5th brother and 7th sister, the Inquisitors, boarded the transport. The Inquisitors approach the mother with the intent of seizing Alora from her, which is the baby's name, who turns out is a Force-sensitive child. So that's a pretty harsh start. Basically, now Inquisitors are stealing babies, which takes them to another level of scumminess. So, Rolly, take it from there.
So after that, the scene cuts to the Ghost, where we see Ahsoka, who we haven't seen for a few episodes now. She's arriving to have a visit with Kanan, and the conversation goes like this. Kanan tells her, "This is unexpected. Don't get me wrong. It's always good to see you, but usually it means there's trouble." And Ahsoka tells him, what I have to say is Jedi business. And Kanan goes, well, then I guess I qualify. Ahsoka laughs and she tells him, you qualify more than I do. I've been monitoring transmissions from Mustafar to find out more about the Sith Lord, obviously referring to Darth Vader. Information about him eludes me, but I've learned more about his Inquisitors. It seems they have a secondary mission to make retrievals. And Kanan responds, we know they hunt Jedi. What else are they after? And Ahsoka says, at this point, I can only guess. I managed to decode 2 sets of coordinates. I'm on my way to investigate the first one. And Kanan says, and you want me to check out the second one? I'm in. Ahsoka says, you should have Ezra join you. And Kanan laughs and says, he's already briefed on the mission. And the reason he laughs is because he immediately pushes the button to open the door, and Ezra comes tumbling in because he's had his ear against the door the entire time listening in. So Ahsoka sees this and she advises Kanan that he should bring Zeb as well, as he previously proved himself against the Inquisitors. So Kanan, Ezra, Zeb, and Chopper all take off to the coordinates that Ahsoka provided them. And once they arrive on the planet, they're confused as to what exactly they're looking for. They tell Chopper to plug into the city to get a map of the exact location, and they find out that the location of these coordinates that Ahsoka provided is actually in housing units, which is kind of like the poor part of town. Mm-hmm. So Kanan assigns Zeb and Chopper to locate the Inquisitor ship, just to basically be on the lookout to see if they're there or not, while he and Ezra look into the housing units. So while this is happening, we see Ahsoka take an A-wing to go investigate the other coordinates that she mentioned. And these other coordinates end up being the civilian shuttle we saw at the beginning of the episode. So she boards it and the shuttle appears like it's abandoned. Obviously it was attacked. We saw it was attacked by the Inquisitors early in the episode. So she's just kind of snooping around trying to figure out what happened. And she hears a faint voice in the distance, and she approaches what appears to be a fallen woman. And this woman ends up being the mother, or as we find out here in this scene, that she's actually the grandmother of Alora, which was the youngling we saw at the very beginning. So the woman tells her, help, I'm here. And Ahsoka goes, it's okay, you're safe now. The woman responds, help me, help my grandchild. And Ahsoka says, your grandchild? And the woman says, they took her, the Red Blades. They knew that she has it. Find her, she has it. And Ahsoka tells her, rest, you need to rest. I will find her. So what's interesting in this scene is she's telling Ahsoka she has it, mm-hmm. And she's referring to the Force. She knows that her granddaughter, Alora, is Force sensitive. I know we mentioned at the beginning that we know the child is Force sensitive. That's kind of just like context clues from what we've seen in Clone Wars episodes. There's actually a Clone Wars episode called Children of the Force where something similar happened. We just kind of know already what the Inquisitors are up to and what Vader is exactly trying to do. Right. And this is also, go ahead. Sorry.
If it involves the Inquisitors, like there's only one thing, they serve one purpose, and that's to hunt Jedi. So why else would they be looking for babies if they weren't Force sensitive?
Yeah, exactly. So getting back to the planet where Kanan and the team are at, Zeb and Chopper locate the Inquisitor ships that like Kanan asked them to, and they quickly dispose of the Seven Sisters probe, who's kind of there overlooking the ships, making sure everything is okay. They dispose of the probe before the probe can alert the Seven Sisters to the Rebels' presence. And they're about to prepare to blow up the ships, and suddenly Zeb hears a baby crying in one of the cockpits of the Inquisitor ships, and it ends up being baby Alora, who was stolen from the civilian transport. And this is a really funny scene. There's a conversation between Zeb and Chopper once he hears the baby, and Zeb goes, I really hope that's not a baby Inquisitor. And Chopper starts grunting like he always does.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell what Chopper is saying in this scene based off of what Zeb tells him. So again, Chopper responds and Zeb goes, no, we can't just leave it here. And Chopper starts talking again, and Zeb goes, we'll blow up the ship after we get the baby. What is wrong with you? So going back to the Halloween theme, by the way, I love the way you added that.
Thank you.
Or the killer theme, so to say, in the last episode. Yeah, here, I don't want to say it on camera, but we kind of know what Chopper is insinuating to do with baby Alora.
It's literally in his nickname. He is a murder child. I'll say it for you, man. And this is proof right here. More proof.
So while that's happening, we see Kanan and Ezra arriving at the housing units like they said they were going to go investigate. But they appear to be too late, as the unit they're approaching has already been broken into. And they go into the room and they find a fallen Ithorian mother named Aura. And just an FYI, guys, if you don't recall what an Ithorian is, they're kind of like that
Snail.
Is that a snail?
It looks like a snail, or like, I forgot what the original toy from the 70s was called, but it was like, was he Walrus Man? Was that
I don't know.
Because before he had a name, and before the universe expanded or whatever, and we had all these different species names, I believe he was one of the from the original toy line, or not the original, but maybe from Empire. And that same character that looks kind of like a snail with the I believe he was Walrus Man, but I'm gonna be wrong, and there's legions of nerds getting angry at me right now, so I will do my research while you keep going.
It's all good. But anyways, yeah, like Pete was saying, they have that shape in their head, and they kind of have like two mouths, if I'm not mistaken. I think we got some more detail on that on the Book of Boba Fett, but they kind of talk out of the side of their mouth, so they speak like a really, really like type of advanced language based off of their racial features, so to say, or species features is the better.
Sorry, I just figured it out. It was not Walrus Man. I retract that statement. He was known as Hammerhead.
That makes more sense.
There we go.
So getting back to the Rebels episode, they find a fallen Ithorian mother named Ura, and she tells them that 2 Red Blades arrived to take her child, Pipey. I don't know if that's the actual kid's name, but that's kind of what she utters, and Ezra and Kanan both just kind of accept that to be the kid's name.
Right.
And she tells them that she managed to send her child away with the droid before they could take him. So Ezra consoles Ura and tells her they'll find Pipey, while handing her what appears to be Pipey's Tuca doll. And if you guys might recognize that doll from the Bad Batch. That's actually the doll that Wrecker gives to Omega. I wanted to do a shout out to this one because I didn't actually notice this until I rewatched this episode. That kind of plush doll, it doesn't really stick out until I see the Bad Batch, and then you go back and watch Bad Batch, you go back and watch this episode of Rebels. You're like, wait, I've seen that before, and sure enough, it has a name. It's called a Tuca doll, and a Tuca is basically just like a species of some type of creature in the Star Wars universe that the Star Wars universe decided to make into like a cute plushie.
Right.
And
because we're always merchandising. Don't forget.
Yeah, speaking of which, I need to pick up a Tuca doll for my collection. And as I was doing the research on that, I found out that Lothcats, which we know from Rebels, are actually a subspecies of the Tuca. So
okay,
I can kind of see how that would be like a toy. So Kanan ends up telling Zeb to locate the droid carrying Pipey, at the reluctance of Zeb, who now realizes he has some sort of skill at finding children. Zeb quickly locates the droid and tells it that he is there to help Ura get her child to safety. The droid is kind of hesitant. The droid's scared, obviously. He has some kind of attachment to this Ithorian family, but he does ultimately give up the child to Zeb. And the droid kind of makes a motion like he wants to go with Zeb, and Zeb's like, you can't go with me. You need to, keep walking around and be the decoy because the Inquisitors are looking for you. So Zeb probably takes like 5 steps with this baby, and then this droid comes flying backwards, slashed in half, because the Inquisitors have already found him. So I don't know what gets Pipey so riled up. He's a baby. I mean, let's be honest here. I don't know if it's because Zeb is ugly or he's scared of the Inquisitors, but he starts crying, and sure enough, the Inquisitors, they see Zeb, and Zeb sees them, and Zeb immediately takes off on foot. He's got to get out of there to save the kid. So he goes on the run, and he runs into some other type of unit there in the town, and it's kind of like a tower unit, so to say. And while he's in there, he knows he needs help now, so he calls Kanan to get some assistance. So after he calls Kanan and Ezra both quickly locate Zeb at this tower unit, and they find him hiding in a room trying to keep Pipey quiet. He's already kind of calmed down the child, and I don't know why. Ezra's just annoying sometimes. I think everybody kind of knows that.
Yeah.
Because Zeb is telling them how it was a struggle to calm down Pipey, and Ezra immediately has to stick his nose in there. Like, well, what's the issue? So sure enough, Ezra goes to Pipey, and he starts making him cry again. So Kanan's now annoyed because they know that they're going to be found because the baby won't keep quiet. So Kanan tells Ezra that he needs to connect with Pipey to calm him down. And Ezra doesn't know how to do this because he can't calm down Pipey. The Inquisitors locate the rebels and they once again have to go on the run. So realizing that they need a distraction to get the baby out of there, Kanan steps up to the plate. And Kanan tells the team, they hunt Jedi, right? Instead of Pipey, let them hunt me. And Ezra says, don't you mean us? And Kanan says, you have to get the little one out of here. And I think I know how. Use the cooling ducts. In, of course, typical Ezra fashion. Ezra says, I won't let you face them without me. And Kanan says, you made a promise to return this child to his mother, and the best chance we've got to keep it is for you to calm him down. And Ezra goes, I can't. He's terrified. And Kanan says, because he senses your fear. And Ezra says, how can he sense my fear? And Kanan, the light bulb immediately turns on when Ezra says this. And Kanan says, because he's strong with the Force. I should have seen it. The Inquisitors are after these kids because they're like you, Ezra. They're afraid the children could grow up to become Jedi. So they're going to execute this plan, and Ezra proceeds to sneak out Pipey through the cooling ducts, but not before the Inquisitors are yet again immediately alerted to their presence because he can't keep Pipey quiet. There's a brief moment where you do see him connect with him, but this is already after the fact where the Inquisitors have located them. So we get a bit more progression as to Ezra's Force powers and the way he's able to connect with creatures in previous episodes, but now an actual being, so to say. So fortunately, right when the Inquisitors locate Ezra, Kanan locates the Inquisitors and he engages the two of them while Ezra escapes with Pipey. Ezra tells Pipey that once he gets him back to his mother, maybe he can come live with them on Gurel, which is Gurel's kind of the temporary hideout for the rebels. We have not really gotten name of that planet. I think we got mention of it a few episodes back, but every time we cut to the ghost at the beginning of each of these episodes of Rebels, they're on Gurel. So when he says this, they show the Seventh Sister's other probe droid sneaking up on him, and he hears that and he records it. He records Ezra telling Pipey that once he gets him back to his mother, maybe he can come live with them on Gurel. So obviously he's recording this because now he knows the location of where the rebels hideout is. So definitely foreshadowing some future trouble for the rebels. So Kanan's engaging the two Inquisitors, but he is quickly outmatched. And Zeb kind of sees this and he grabs Kanan and they basically run out of one of the windows and jump onto the street below. And when they jump down, they end up jumping onto a speeder. So we basically get a chase scene on a speeder because the Inquisitors follow suit. They jump and they land on the speeder of themselves. And you get a pretty cool chase scene. It kind of reminded me of the scene in Temple of Doom when Short Round's driving the car. I don't know why it reminded me of that scene. Maybe I just like to connect Indiana Jones and Star Wars because they're intentionally connected by Easter eggs, but I'm sure there's plenty of other chase scenes that this mimics. I like to think of that one because it's kind of a ridiculous chase scene because Short Round's driving the car. Yeah. And in this scene, it's some other Ithorian that's driving the car, and they're telling him what to do, and the Inquisitors are, of course, they've stolen somebody else's car, and they're just
well, I mean, Papa George Lucas, he loves him a chase scene. He loves a car chase scene and everything. So I'm sure that the animators put this in purposely to put a smile on his face.
Yeah, that's true, because we also got that chase scene in Attack of the Clones, which we don't talk about too often in the show, but that makes a lot of sense now. I guess I should have said it reminded me of that more so than Indiana Jones. But
that's fine. I mean, it's good to segue to another property, another franchise, because that's the first thing I thought of, which was Attack of the Clones. But you went Indiana Jones, and I'm right there with you, man.
We get another Indiana Jones that I was of reference in a future season 2 episode of Rebels that we'll get to. I think that's probably why I've been thinking about that, because I was specifically thinking about that episode when I was watching this one, because it's kind of on a related note. But future conversation for later.
Okay.
So as they're chasing them, Zeb and Kanan's speeder gets grounded because I think the fifth brother basically throws his lightsaber and slices off one of the engines on that speeder. So now they're on foot and the Inquisitors are chasing them. So at that moment, the Seventh Sister contacts an Imperial commander asking him to send reinforcements and lock down all spaceports, since now Kanan and Zeb are going to meet Ezra, who was ordered to take the child to the spaceport where the Phantom is. So Ezra ends up making it to the hangar, but as he's trying to get in, it's locked, and he's trying to contact Chopper to open it, but Chopper, for whatever reason, is unresponsive to Ezra's requests. Not sure why, but just the way it plays out. So since he can't get Chopper to open it, he contacts Kanan on the comms, and he tells him that the door is locked. And Kanan immediately responds, "I'm a little preoccupied at the moment." And we see Kanan running to Ezra as Ezra basically turns around and sees him on the run, and the Inquisitors following right behind him. Kanan begins dueling the Inquisitors yet again, and this time, sure enough, they dispose of Kanan. I believe they force choke him and kind of just throw him to the ground, and then they kind of just force push Zeb, who obviously, for as strong as Zeb is, he is no contest for Jedi. Ezra, who's still carrying Pipey, he busts out his lightsaber and he's like, well, I guess I'm gonna duel them myself, right? Because my two buddies are knocked out. But the Seventh Sister looks at him and tells him, I don't have time to waste on you, child. And she proceeds to force push Ezra onto the door for the docking bay.
Here it comes. This is the moment.
And this is the moment. I'll admit to you guys, I watch this scene probably at least once a week because it's one of my favorite scenes in Rebels. And sure enough, as he gets knocked back to the hangar door, the door opens and none other than Ahsoka steps through. And this is kind of, I did not watch Rebels when it was on the air, but when you watch the scene, you can tell it's a very big deal in this animated series because sure enough, this is the first time we're going to see Ahsoka duel in Rebels. We have not seen her white lightsabers, so she immediately busts them out and sets to duel the Inquisitors on her own. And the Seventh Sister kind of makes a smirk and she says, unexpected but not unwelcomed. So I took that to mean that they know who Ahsoka is. They know it's a Jedi or a high profile Jedi that they were looking for, and sure enough, Ahsoka ends up revealing herself to them without them even looking for her at that moment. She tells Ahsoka to get the youngling to the ship and she'll take care of this business basically. So Ahsoka begins dueling both Inquisitors while Kanan, Zeb, and Ezra recover and get to the Phantom as per Ahsoka's direction. And like I mentioned, Ahsoka showcases her new white lightsabers and quickly and easily disposes of both Inquisitors. This is kind of more of an action sequence scene, so my words describing it are really not gonna do it justice. Do yourselves a favor and just watch the scene. But some kind of cool takeaways from there that I want to mention is she just disposes of them so easily. When I saw this for the first time, Ahsoka was a badass in Clone Wars, don't get me wrong, but you can tell she's matured even more in her swordsmanship. In this episode, she's much older. She deals with these Inquisitors like they're no issue. She even deignites the Seventh Sister saber, and the Seventh Sister is just like in complete shock. Like, how did you even do that? So that was a cool moment. So she's basically beaten both of them. She tells the Seventh Sister, you're beaten. And when she tells her that, the reinforcements that the Seventh Sister originally called in have arrived, and now Ahsoka must wait before getting answers to many of her questions regarding Vader and his plans. So sure enough, as Ezra and the team were taking off, they knew to fly low because they knew Ahsoka was also going to need an escape route. Right. So she sees the Phantom taking off and she kind of jumps on the building and leaps to board the Phantom so that they can all escape together. And a quick side note, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Ahsoka's white lightsabers. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. The book, the Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnson, explains how she obtains the white sabers or the white kyber crystals. And we're actually going to see that in Tales of the Jedi because she does end up defeating an Inquisitor. And the reason they are white is because she purifies the Inquisitor's red kyber crystals and they turn white at that point.
That's so badass.
I'm hoping that they actually show that aside from the duel that she has with the Inquisitor, I'm hoping that they actually show her healing them. I think that would be a really cool feature because we don't really get too much detail on the colors of the kyber crystals and why they are the colors. And I'd like for Disney and Lucasfilm to start, getting into that. I feel like fans have wanted to know that. They want the true canonization of why crystals are certain colors. The only thing we know as canon officially is that Ahsoka's kyber crystals are white because she purifies them, and Sith's kyber crystals are red because they bleed when they take the kyber crystal from a Jedi. So if it's blue, green, purple, what have you, once the Sith defeats a Jedi, they bleed their crystals and they turn red. So again, I'd like to know more about the other colors and why they ignite the way they do. Okay, so super side distraction, but I get real excited whenever we're talking about anything like in detail like that with Jedi.
It's all good.
So again, the team escapes on the Phantom, and we cut to a scene on the Phantom where we see Baby Laura and Pipey are both safe with the rebels, along with Ura, who is reunited with Pipey. So Ahsoka sees this, and she says they're force sensitive, talking to Kanan. She goes, "I've seen this before. A Sith Lord attempted the same thing back in the Clone Wars, but the Jedi Order stopped him." And like I mentioned earlier in the show, this is a callback to Clone Wars Season 2. The episode was called Children of the Force, where we actually saw Darth Sidious hire Cad Bane to steal Force-sensitive kids. And Kanan responds to Ahsoka, and now there's no Jedi Order to protect them. I guess that task falls to us now. So after that, we cut back to the Inquisitors, who are approaching their ships, but they find that they're destroyed. So Zeb kind of took care of that. The Seven Sisters probe droid, who we saw earlier recording Ezra's message, reunites with her. It begins to play the message of Ezra telling Pipey that once they get him back to his mother, maybe he can go live with them on Gorel. And the Seven Sisters pleased with this, and she says, "We would love to visit you on Gorel." And that's how the episode ends.
Excellent. That was a pretty tight little 22 minutes of action. A lot happened. We're really getting this ball rolling on this Rebels. It's one great episode after another, and this one was no exception. So yeah, man, what do you think so far? I think we're halfway through the season.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite episodes. Like I mentioned to you guys, I rewatched that Ahsoka Inquisitor duel very, very often on YouTube. This is more of an action episode, more so than a story-driven one, so it does move incredibly quick, but it is a great one nonetheless. I'm a really big fan of Rebel Season 2. There's also a lot of
zero mention of there was no Hera and no Sabine in this episode at all. So
yeah, we didn't see them or hear from them, anything. This was a very Jedi driven episode of Rebels.
Awesome, man. So it's only going to keep getting better. So that brings us to the end of our discussion, and that also brings us to the close of Good Morning Lothal, the unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I want to remind everybody to please visit radiolothal.com, get to know your host, drop us a line if you want anything, any questions, comments, feedback. We always welcome it. And of course, traditional podcasters, you can always find us at all the places where you get your podcasts. We are there. Next week, we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 11, and it is simply called Legacy. No idea what that could mean. Any idea, Roland? Put you on the spot.
Definitely dealing with Ezra's parents, I'm assuming, and him being the legacy.
Good. That's a good guess. So until then, we will see you next week. And this has been your host, Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora,
saying, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.